1725, date of birth of John Newton. When he was a young man, he chose a profession. He decided to become a slave trader and captain a slave boat. Is that not the most disgusting profession you can think of? That's what he chose. He took helpless people across the Atlantic, put them in a state of misery, and sold them off in the Caribbean and North America. He didn't think anything of it. He made money. He was fine doing this. No moral questions. He was fine. And then one day, his boat caught fire. Well, it didn't really catch fire, but it was one of the biggest storms in the history of the Atlantic. That boat was tossed, turned, and to such a bad degree that his first mate to the left of him got thrown overboard. Second mate to the right of him tossed overboard. And 13 hours later, only half his crew was remaining. During the middle of it, John Newton, a slave trader, got on his hands and knees and prayed. And when the 13-hour storm was over, he looked in the mirror and basically said, "Why the hell did God spare me? I'm a miserable, disgusting, blood-sucking, parasitic cesspool. Why would God possibly want to save me?" And it made him think. And he changed very quickly. From a slave trader, he became an ordained minister. That's quite a transition. At least my friend from a hubcap thief became a priest. Much smaller transition. In fact, he became an ordained minister who was so popular they had to constantly expand his church because everyone wanted to be there and listen to him. He was a powerful speaker. They loved to hear him speak. But in his own mind, he never quite atoned for the miserable choices he made in life. And he felt it here. So in 1772, to try to atone for his horrible choices, he wrote a hymn. He wrote it for his Sunday class. It was just words, but it's words 251 years later. Everyone in this room can recite, or will recite with me in about 1 minute. The last 19 years of his life was spent as an abolitionist, fighting in the British Empire to have slavery abolished. He was sick for most of those 19 years, and he refused to die. He refused to die simply because he was not going to pass until they abolished slavery. In 1807, the British Parliament passed a law. They abolished slavery. 2 months later, John Newton died. His life's work complete. He felt he had atoned for the choice. And today, if you visit his gravesite, it's the first paragraph of the hymn that he wrote 251 years ago. Everyone recite it with me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that made a wretch of me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. How do you write words that 251 years later, everyone in this room knows? It's simple. His boat caught fire. Which brings me to my next speaker, and actually one of my favorite people in the world. If Lisa Regina looks familiar, you might remember her playing the role of Kim on The Sopranos. If she looks familiar, you might remember her playing the role of Kate Spade on Guiding Light. You might remember her playing the role of Pam in the movie Priceless, or the role of Tina Manfredi in the movie Bronx Paradise, or the role of Mrs. Slattery in the movie 79 Parts, of multiple commercials and multiple movies. She is in her own right a star. But it's the other side of the camera that Lisa made a mark in the world. Because you see, in 2005, Lisa was found battered and bloody on a sidewalk in the Village, just a few blocks from where we're standing today. Her boat caught fire on that day. She lost everything, but she found something far more important. She found inspirational dissatisfaction. Again, back to the desk. Enough. I have had enough. And how she responded changed the world. She started a 501c3 called The Right, W-R-I-T-E, to heal. And she gave a voice to battered women via the stage, film, books, public speaking, so they could tell their stories. They could come out and speak. And as a father to two daughters, this was very important to me, she gave a voice to women who had none. And she probably has saved millions of lives as a result. And it did not stop there. She climbed even a higher mountain and started the Veterans Film Apprenticeship. She felt horrible for veterans who came out of the war and couldn't get back into civilian life. They were on drugs often. They were displaced often. They were suicidal more than you might possibly imagine. What could she do to make a difference? So she gave them a voice. She began filming their stories for the heroes they are. And they got to speak about their military service and the impact it had on their families. And then she began training them in cinematography. So she gave them a purpose and employment for a lifetime. When Lisa's boat caught fire, she changed the world. I'm very proud of you. Come up here, Lisa.
The civilian-military divide is real. It's hard to relate to military service unless you've walked in a veteran's boots. It's especially difficult for veterans to transition back into civilian life. There's a unique program called the Veterans Film Apprenticeship, which will provide veterans with the training and licensing they need to become a Part 107 commercial drone pilot. Once licensed, the program will assist veterans with job opportunities in the film and aviation industry. The Veterans Film Apprenticeship was born from an encounter between Army veteran Captain Leslie Nicole Smith and her service dog Isaac, and civilian filmmaker and drone pilot Lisa Regina. After a day on Regina's film set, Captain Smith expressed she experienced the camaraderie she so dearly missed from her service. It was the beginning of a special friendship and the VFA. As each veteran completes the apprenticeship, they will be offered a job as a drone camera pilot on a narrative series, Heroic Episodes. This series will feature veteran stories of bravery and military service. Together, a veteran and a civilian are on a mission.
Good morning, everyone. The audio is really low, but as you can see, this is actor Joe Mantegna from Criminal Minds. He's award-winning, the star of the TV series, but most importantly, he's a true patriot. He's a great humanitarian. You might have caught him on Memorial Day weekend with Gary Sinise. They do that special every year for Memorial Day for veterans. So Joe has just recently come on board for the Veterans Film Apprenticeship and Heroic Episodes, which is the series part that Stephen was talking about. All this really came about 9 years ago when I expanded my mission statement of my nonprofit, A Right to Heal, to include military men and women. I met some veterans, one specifically, Captain Leslie Nicole Smith and her service dog Isaac. She took one of my acting workshops in New York City, actually. And the significance of this is that Captain Smith is legally blind and she lost her leg while serving in Bosnia in the Army. So when she called me, my dear friend Barry Morgenstein, great photographer here in the city, he said, Captain Smith wants to take your acting workshop. It's an on-camera workshop for TV and film. So I said, of course, you know, she's always welcome, you know, she sacrificed greatly and would love to have her, be honored to have her. So she came into my workshop. There were about 30 actors. Everyone just kind of fell silent because everyone was thinking the same thing I was thinking. How is she going to know where to look, you know? And so here she is in front of my camera, full class, and I said, excuse me, Captain Smith, I have to ask you this. I just want to know, this is a commercial, so you're directing your eye line into the lens. How will you know where to look? How can I guide you? And she smiled, beautiful smile. She said, well, I can hear your voice, and I suppose you're directly behind that camera lens. And I said, yes, that's great. So she delivered that commercial. It was amazing. She was so charismatic and calm and just engaging, and she really made an impression on all of us. So after that workshop, I cast her in a short film that I produced and directed. And it was about a young teen who meets a veteran, and that veteran becomes a mentor. And I wanted her to play the counselor, VA counselor, because she has such a calm demeanor. She's very easy to, you know, talk to. So I cast her in that role. She came all the way up from Fredericksburg, Virginia, with her service dog, car service, trains, whatever it took, out to Queens where we were filming. She was on set 15 hours. I was doting over her. You know, I wanted to make sure she was comfortable and had everything. And when we were done, I had a beautiful hotel room waiting for her, dinner, and she was shaking. She grabbed my hand, she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I can't sleep. I'm so inspired. I'm on fire. She said, I haven't felt this camaraderie since I've served, and I miss it so much. I'm wide awake. I'm going back home tonight. And I was like, okay, you're going to get home like 4 in the morning. Are you sure? Are you sure? And that night, I couldn't sleep thinking about what she said and thinking about that experience. And the light bulb went off, and I thought, wow, I wonder if other veterans will feel this way. So the next 2 short films that I produced, directed, I invited veterans as production crew, as cast, as consultants, because again, the storyline involved veterans, and I wanted to make sure the writing was authentic. And I'm not a military woman, so I wanted to understand. And it was amazing because they loved the process, you know, the process of writing, production. They just loved being on set. And again, the same response as Captain Smith had. They hadn't felt that camaraderie. They felt part of a new mission. And for me as a filmmaker, it was amazing because I really had a chance to focus on the monitor, focus on my actors, and I didn't have to worry about anything. I mean, they had my set locked up, secured, safe, anything I needed, and anything that went wrong, because of course making a film, something always goes wrong, they didn't panic, they kept their cool, and they continued with the mission. So I knew I was onto something, and I really felt a great responsibility as an advocate, as an artist, to do something. And I thought, what can I do to get these veterans on set? And I thought about it, and I had recently, during COVID, became a Part 107 drone pilot, because we use drones, you know, as we're filming. So I thought that would be a great field to kind of provide the veterans with drone training, prepare them for their Part 107 test. And as we know, drones are being used not just in the film industry, but so many other industries. And I thought, okay, this is perfect because maybe not every veteran wants to go into filmmaking, but perhaps they want to specialize in search and rescue, or maybe they have their real estate license or can work for a realtor, and you know how they take shots of properties like that, cinematic shots, or any of the various fields like agricultural research. So that made the most sense. And I was recruited during COVID into a cohort, it's titled Flight Plan, which is basically experts in aviation. I was the only filmmaker. I almost quit after the first online Zoom meeting because I felt really insecure. These were experts that were talking about military drones and security on this really high level, like things that I didn't understand, and the innovation in aviation that was like far beyond my scope of being a Part 107 pilot. But my husband said, hang in there, I have a feeling this is going to be something good, just hang in there. He said there's a reason why they invited you in, and he was right. So I hung in during COVID. I met people from all around the world that were in aviation and the cutting edge of drone technology, and the end result was the FAA, NARC, the National Aerospace Research Technology Park, they really embraced me. And they did so because a lot of veterans work within those organizations, and they really saw the value in educating our veterans, providing them with a new mission. So they supported me, they applied for a grant, and recently I was awarded a grant of $150,000 to launch the Veterans Film Apprenticeship and Heroic Episodes. The series Heroic Episodes is based on all the interviews that I've done over 9 years with military men and women, all branches of service, all wars, and really learning about their life once they come home, the family dynamics, their siblings, just everything about that transition. So combining the drone training with the series is the ultimate vision, because that way I can guarantee that veterans are working on our film set, and they're working on an ongoing series, which Heroic Episodes is a narrative dramatic series. It's based on all true veteran stories. So simultaneously, this way I can implement the Veterans Film Apprenticeship while we're filming the series. But that doesn't mean that we can't still provide drone training until the series is up and running, because as we know, as most people know, getting a TV series produced and then picked up by a network is a real big challenge. But I am up for that challenge, and now that we have someone like Joe on board, I really believe that we have a better chance of that happening with the series. The drone training, that part of it, I'm excited because the very first class of veterans, 12 veterans, will go through the Veterans Film Apprenticeship. We're slated to begin that program in the fall. Of course, with congressional funding, it takes time to release the funds that you've been awarded, and it's a daunting process. But thank God I have a strong team of the Atlantic County Economic Alliance, the aviation experts that I shared with you. They've all been guiding me through that process. So the first class of veterans that will go through the program will be trained with all FAA regulations, mapping, weather, all these specifics that you need to become a Part 107 drone pilot. And then at the end of the course, we'll have a hands-on where they're actually flying drones. In the classroom, we actually have these tiny little drones. They're about this big. It's called a Rise Tello. And that's what they'll first begin to learn on. This way, if they crash into a wall or something, we don't have to worry about it, because the drone is very inexpensive. It's like a $150 drone. It's really just to get that hands-on feel for it. Then when they graduate the program, this is what I'm really excited about, each veteran will receive a drone. It's a DJI, it's about a $4,000 drone. The camera on it is fantastic, it's amazing. And I can't wait to see the veterans' faces at the end of the program when they receive that drone. Because after all, when you have your Part 107 license, you really need your own drone if you're going to work independently. So that'll be exciting. And also on graduation day, in addition to receiving their own drone, they will meet drone businesses, owners of drone businesses, and connect and network. This way we can guide those veterans towards hopefully apprenticeships and jobs. The series Heroic Episodes is, I'll just give you the premise of it, the log line, if you will. A veteran returns home after being injured from an IED blast, and his leg is severely injured, and ultimately he has to surrender his leg. And he meets a young urban teen who's also struggling because he's being bullied and he's kind of being pulled into gang life in this environment. And they meet each other and they wind up really saving each other in the storyline. kind of like Karate Kid, you know, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel's son, but it's a veteran and an urban teen, and it's a lot more realistic, gritty, you know, real life. The first season, I have the show Bible for 8 episodes. The pilot episode is complete. I'm in the process of meeting with potential investors, asking them to invest in the series part of it, since we have the Veterans Film Apprenticeship part of it for drone training. We have that launched. Some of the money from the 150 is being earmarked for filming, and that'll help me because I can at least go to investors and say, okay, we have this portion of the 150 in escrow, and we'd like you to match it or contribute to it so we can move forward with filming the pilot episode. I think that for me, the most important and really passionate part of this has been meeting military men and women, because unless you're in the military, it's kind of far removed from your life. It's hard to understand as any other, you know, profession that you're not living. And I've learned that the trauma that I survived from my domestic violence assault and the trauma that they are surviving from war, we had a lot in common. So when I first sat down with my interviews, the first interview was a Vietnam veteran, and his name's Animal. And when I asked him his real name, he looked at me and said, Animal. I was like, okay. So I thought this is going to be a tough interview, you know. And I looked at him and he said, hold on. He said, before you start, what the F do you know about Nam? And I said, nothing. Nothing, sir. I know nothing about Vietnam. I know my sister's boyfriend went to Nam and I was about 8 years old, and I remember he came back a different man. I didn't even recognize him. I said, but that's about it. I said, but I do know a little bit about PTSD, and I do know a little bit about survival. And in no way am I trying to compare that to war or your service, but this is what happened to me. And I explained to him. And halfway through the story, he reached over and he grabbed my hand and he said, you survived your own war, let's talk. And he just opened up, and we had a bonding moment. And it's been that way over the past 9 years. Every veteran that I meet, you know, I tell them openly, you know, full transparency. The reason why I'm doing this is I feel a great connection. And I'm lucky to be alive, you know. If it wasn't for the writing that I was doing that helped me get out that pain that I was feeling, and if it wasn't for support, my counseling, my domestic violence groups that I went to for counseling, my family, my friends, if it wasn't for that support, I wouldn't be here. So the passion behind it is my own personal story, but I really, truly, truly believe that in some way we've all had loss and had our boats catch on fire and storms that we had to endure. And I think that's what makes us all human, and the fact that we survive it, and if we can just share stories and support each other. So I loved what Dr. Goldberg was saying about group and about the importance of that. And I'm inspired every time I get on a film set and I see veterans there, and I can tell that they're happy. And I mean, what better way than to give back, to thank veterans. I never felt comfortable saying thank you for your service. It seems just meaningless, and I've met a lot of veterans that don't even like that, you know, because they don't feel sincere. So I think this is the most honest way I can give back, and it feels good, and it feels like the right thing to do. And in doing so, we're not just helping our veterans, we're helping their families, their siblings, and I believe each other, because when we do great things together, it feels good. And why not have that feeling and a better quality of life? So that's the Veterans Film Apprenticeship and Heroic Episodes. I have my cards here. I actually just got one of those scan cards too with the QR code. It's kind of cool. I guess, I mean, you could just type in the website, but I guess, you know. So there's business cards, feel free to take one. And You could go online and watch Joe's testimonial. I'm really happy that he did that because he was in the middle of directing an episode of Criminal Minds, and but he really loves the program, and it makes sense why he and Gary Sinise have partnered, because they're like-minded and they're good guys, they're good humanitarians. They really care. Thank you for your time.